All right, here we want to just take a few words and talk about mortal and venial sins. All right. Now, the main thing is we want to talk about the difference between the two, mortal, venial sins. It's very important to get down. So, the distinction, what is it? First and foremost, venial sins are smaller sins, and mortal, bigger deal, right? Uh, Mainly venial. What does venial mean? Venial means excusable. Mortal means deadly, right? So just in their name, you can tell there's a big difference, okay? A good example to understand the difference. Um, let's take an example of you committing a few different acts. You stand up friend that you're supposed to meet in the parking lot. All right, you stand him up, right? Maybe the next day you're going to go out to dinner with him. He's not going to say, "Man, it's over between us. We're not friends anymore because you stood me up. We're supposed to go over our notes for this class and you didn't do it." Right? Not the case, right? Your friend might say, I can't really trust you as much anymore, right? But the friendship's still there, okay? Example of what's going on. This is kind of like a venial sin. It's a small problem and sin. It damages the relationship, right? But excusable, and it doesn't completely sever it, right? So naturally, y'all spend time together again. He starts trusting you again, and it builds the relationship back up, right? There's not any extra stuff that needs to be done to right the wrong, right, and to bridge the gap and to connect the relationship again. Very different than, let's say, mortal sin example would be like you know that your friend has a girlfriend of 3 years, right? And you take the girlfriend and you steal her away from your friend, right? You steal the girlfriend away, right? Your friend's not gonna probably not gonna say, when you say I stole your girlfriend, but let's go out to dinner tonight. He's probably not gonna say yeah, okay, right? He's gonna say forget you, we're done, right? The friendship is damaged, right? It's completely severed, right? And that's the difference. A venial sin damages the friendship, doesn't sever it. Mortal sin completely severs the friendship. And so, what do you need? Well, you've got to probably have a real heart to heart, sit down and talk. You've got to get rid of the girlfriend that you've stolen, right? And do something, and then big time intervention to bridge the gap and to bring the relationship back together. It's completely severed, right? That's the difference. Mortal sin completely severs the relationship. So that what do you need? You need intervention to bridge the gap and bring the relationship back together again. That's why we talk about venial sins. Just by venial sins, having the right disposition when you go to mass, right, and you receive the Eucharist, right, that in itself, right, is you having that heart to heart to bring together, right, the damaged relationship in these small sins, right. Venial sins are forgiven in the Eucharist, right, but mortal sin, right, is like you trying to go out to dinner with your friend right after you stole his girlfriend. Not going to happen, right? First, there needs to be a reconciliation, an intervention, right, to right the wrong, to fix the relationship. You've got to get rid of the thing that's damaging the relationship, right? The stealing of the girlfriend thing. That thing's got to be gone before it all comes back together, right? That's kind of the idea of mortal sin. And why mortal sin, you aren't to receive the Eucharist, right, and to try to go out to dinner with Christ, right, where at the same time you're saying, I reject you or I steal your girlfriend, right? It just doesn't work that way, right? That's why when it's talked about venial sin, forgiven with the Eucharist, mortal sin, we need the sacrament of reconciliation, right? Where we receive the grace of forgiveness of sins after baptism, right, to build the relationship back together again. Okay. Next thing to mention with venial and mortal sins, very important, is what makes a mortal sin a mortal sin. This is important to know. Let me just pop this back up. What makes a mortal sin a mortal sin? What's important about this is you think, okay, mortal sin. Is there a list? What? There is no set list of these sins are mortal sins, right? But because we're talking about a relationship, some things you do are different depending on how close you are in a relationship. For example, this is important. Let's say some stranger you hear is talking behind your back, and insulting you, right? You're kind of hurt, okay? But it's very different than your best friend doing the same thing, talking behind your back and talking bad about you, right? What's more hurtful and damaging, right? The best friend, right? So as you grow closer to somebody, the same activities, right? You become more aware of how bad and how much they hurt the relationship. They hurt the relationship more. So in the same thing when it comes to our sin, right? The more we go in a relationship with Christ, the more we recognize what sin does, and the more sins, right, are painful, right? And they hurt the relationship because we know it's relational, and we have a relationship. Does that make sense? So what does that mean? That means that, in one sense, Saint Francis of Assisi thought he was the worst of sinners. In a sense, he was correct because he grows in so much of a saintly relationship with Christ. He knew that the littlest, very tiny thing he did hurt Christ, right? In a way that you and I, maybe in our weak relationship with Christ, comparatively, right? We don't even recognize the damage that it does, right? So the more we go in relationship with Christ, the more the smallest things we know hurt the relationship with Christ. So what are the criteria for a mortal sin? Here's what we need to know, okay? A mortal sin has to be a serious or grave sin, right? Serious or grave sin. Again, right? What becomes serious and grave really grows when our relationship grows, right? Just like talking bad about somebody. Talking bad about a stranger, not as damaging, not as hurtful as talking bad about mom or best friend or your brother, right? So there we go. Serious or grave, first criteria. Second, we have to have full knowledge that it's a sin, right? And thirdly, consent. Free will, right? We have to willfully do it, right? So a serious, grave matter that we know is wrong and that with our free will we do it, right? That's what makes a mortal sin. And that's why it always grows, right? The more our relationship grows, the more we grow in knowledge, the more we understand our free choice, and the more sins become serious and grave, right? That's what makes a mortal sin. Okay? Done.